Welcome back to another episode of RunYogi Diaries. This is your host, Santosh Shiva. In the house today is Sarika Shah, a registered dietitian and a nutritionist who has dedicated her life to using Indian food to lead a healthy lifestyle using science. We get into 101 of nutrition. What are macronutrients? What are micronutrients? How do you make decisions on what's good for you? I hope this leaves you with some ideas on making good choices about what to eat. If you like this channel, please remember to leave your comments, hit like if you like this video, and please do remember to subscribe the channel. Let's dig in. Hey Sarika, welcome to RunYogi Diaries.
Hi, Santosh. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. You know how I found you? I did a Google on Indian nutritionists in America, and yours was the first one that popped up in Google search. So, so you are pretty, popular out there because Google just threw your name as first one. So thank you for joining the show, and we want to kind of jump into a little bit of that. So before all of that, let me maybe request you to make a quick personal introduction, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Sarika Shah. I am a registered dietitian, and you're the first to tell me. I didn't know I would be the first to show up on a Google search, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I guess my name kind of says it, Indian Nutritionist. I am a dietitian that focuses on South Asians living in America,
Mm.
just as I am one.
Right, and that's great. So actually, maybe we should talk a little bit about how did it all happen? How did you end up kind of narrowing yourself down to that is a mission or a purpose?
Yeah. So, my parents are immigrants, and
Mm.
I was applying to college. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Typical Daisy, strong in sciences and math, and so I applied under engineering.
Mm.
I applied under engineering, and it was not my passion. I didn't do well my first quarter in undergrad, and at the same time, my sister was diagnosed with a GI disease. And so I took a Nutrition 101 class thinking, as an 18-year-old, I'm smart and I can figure out everything.
Mm.
And my passion fell down that path. I absolutely fell in love with nutritional sciences, changed my major, told my dad on a plane ride to India
Mm.
that I was changing my major from engineering to nutritional science. I figured I couldn't get in trouble in public. Um, and it worked out, super supportive. And I
Mm.
was actually able to realize I didn't realize how important it was back then, but I did realize
Mm.
that with my sister's ulcerative colitis diagnosis, and her seeing a dietitian where nutrition is such an important part of that disease, they were asking her to change her food,
Mm.
give up I'm Gujarati, so giving up the typical Gujarati food. I grew up eating roti dal bhat shak every night or 6 out of the 7 nights a week.
Mm.
And to take that out of our house was pretty hard.
Mm.
And then you add the element of vegetarianism. And so that was something
Mhm.
where it sparked an interest, and that's kind of where my path fell.
Nice. And what year was this when you made a switch
Oh,
from engineering to nutrition?
in 1995, so a long time
Wow.
ago.
And there was a time when I guess nutrition was not necessarily not like it is today, right? So it must have been a big
No,
decision.
it was a big decision. My dad's a father of two daughters, and his biggest concern was, are you going to be able to support yourself in your career financially? Like, I
Mm.
don't even know what
Mm.
this major is. What are you going to do with it? But it took me down a path of great success, and I don't regret any minute of it. I absolutely love what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
wide variety. I did acute care, which is hospital care. I did long-term care, which is long-term care, meaning, more mainly geriatrics or someone that needs recovering from a stroke, possibly, or a big surgery.
Mm.
Then I went into private practice with the psych group. And now I'm still in private practice, but doing my own thing.
Mhm.
And that's what landed me on your show. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said, with related to what kind of sparked off this interest was what your sister was dealing with. So what happens in a condition like that? You're not allowed to eat spice. Is that what? I mean, can you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. So she had ulcerative colitis, and back then there's an emphasis of you have inflammation in your GI, and to keep it at a very high level. So you have inflammation in your GI, you're not able to absorb certain macronutrients and micronutrients. And so with that, the emphasis of increasing your protein and your fat, well, in the American culture, it's often animal protein, avocado, egg, if it's vegetarian, where they didn't think there was any room for lentils and beans and legumes, which is so critical in our diet. They didn't know what they were if you talked about mung beans. I mean, now definitely there's much more education, but this is a long time ago and there was none of that education back then. And so there was a big gap between the nutrition that we learned in America, even in my studies, versus what ethnic nutrition is. And now there is definitely more cultural competence, but back then there wasn't.
Yeah. No,
And
that makes
so
sense.
it
I
was
think.
figuring, and so for me, it was learning our Indian ingredients. What can they, how can they help,
Yeah.
and meet her needs? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. And because one does get to so why I started this podcast and what my background is, more of recreational athletics, running, bicycling, all that stuff. And in the recreational athletics, for us as Indians, you know we've always struggled with what to eat. Like, for example, if you're going to run a marathon, on the previous evening everybody has a pasta party. Now, you may not be someone who eats pasta regularly. You might, you may not.
Right.
But what's the alternative, right? So is rice a good thing, or is parathas a good thing? These are questions that most people have. And I also host a running group, and these are the questions that most people ask. Like, hey, what can I eat? I can't eat non-Indian food. So what can I eat if I'm a runner, or if I just want to lead a healthy lifestyle, or if you want to lose weight, right? So what you're doing is a great service to all of us.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. Great. So maybe we should get in, since we're talking about Indian food and nutritional elements of food. Maybe we should get into a little bit of nutrition 101, right? Just kind of some
Sure.
basics. So while most people you talk to tend to have some broad understanding of what are the key elements of nutrition, but it's always a guesswork. So maybe we should get into a little bit about nutrition 101. What are the basic building blocks of food, and then go from there.
Right. So nutrition, I think there's a lot of noise out as what is nutrition. Nutrition is the process of us taking food in, using it for growth, metabolism, repair, which is important for athletes like you, endurance athletes. And then there's the ingestion, the digestion, the absorption, the transport to various parts of our body, and then excretion. So that's nutrition in a whole, right? And then the science of it is the physiological process of it. And so that's nutrition. It's not what do I eat, when do I eat it, what's good for me, what's bad for me. It's actually how are we sustaining our bodies as a human, and giving it, nourishment. And so with that being said, in common media and what we learn is macronutrients and micronutrients, something that you and I touched on shortly in our conversations before. So there are 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Are you comfortable starting with, let's hit carbohydrates, I guess, as the first
Go for it.
macronutrient?
The favorite one.
Favorite, right? The one that gets a bad rap. Let's start off with the myth. Carbs are not bad. Carbohydrates are not bad for you. They do not cause weight gain. So I'd like to just put that out there. Carbohydrates should be anywhere between 45 to 65% of your diet. They are The ones that we consider bad or why they get a bad rap are considered the sugars or the refined or the bad carbohydrates, I guess is what you would want to say. But carbohydrates are important in the form of complex or whole carbs. Those are the ones that I could not emphasize enough. And we see them in our Indian diet, the vegetables, right? Vegetables are carbohydrates. They are fantastic. They're a great source of fiber. Fiber is a part of carbohydrates. So,
See, we don't know that. That's interesting.
yeah.
Never, when I think of it like that, we never think of it like that.
I mean, they're so vital for our overall health. Fiber is so important in South Asians because we are at higher risk for heart disease and diabetes. Now, fiber can be the binding to reduce our cholesterol. In some sense, think of, a straw getting clogged up with mud. Well, we need to clean it out. How are we going to clean it out? We need the fiber in our diet. Where do you get fiber? In your fruits and vegetables. Right? And then we also get it in quinoa, dals, beans, legumes, lentils, English and Indian words. Oats are great. Barley, farro. In America, we have all of those different ones. Bajri is another one that's Indian. So those are the ones that are key to keeping into our diet. Even rice. Rice is great.
Right.
White rice versus brown rice, I don't pick too much. I don't think it's something to sweat about. Enjoy the rice that you like.
Yeah, in South India, we have the boiled rice, the big ones, red ones.
Yeah.
In Kerala, we have those. They are kind of they're not as refined as the white rice, I guess.
Yeah, it probably has some sort of husk if there's a red to it, which means that there contains maybe a little bit of fiber. And so those are important. Those are, in some sense, I know a simple way to use it is it's the fuel for our body, just like gasoline is the fuel for our cars to be running, or electricity if you have an electric car. But that is what keeps our batteries going. We need the carbohydrates as an energy form. Do you have any questions about the carbohydrates?
No. So
No?
why have carbohydrates gotten a bad rap?
Yeah, so we live in the United States, and we have a lot of processed carbohydrates. That means like the potato chips or the cookies, the confectionery items that are super processed items, white bread or pastries, stopping at your Starbucks and getting a scone along with your tea, right? So those are processed. Those can often be referred to as empty calories because they don't have nutrition to them, a greater nutrition value, but they provide calories.
Right.
And those refined items and those processed items can cause a spike in your blood sugar, which can put us at greater risk for diabetes. And as South Asians, you and I both know, we are at greater risk for type 2 diabetes. So those are ones that I, as a registered dietitian, would encourage you to limit those, not to eliminate them, but to limit them. And when you're going to choose a carbohydrate, find something that's a little bit more nourishing for your body. That's to say, potatoes are great too. Potato with the skin. The skin has the fiber, has the nutrients in it. Eat it. It's grown in the ground.
Yeah.
The soil's nourished. Eat it. It's okay.
Yeah.
But it's not. It doesn't equivalent to a French fry.
Yeah.
Or a potato chip.
Yeah. Makes sense. I had a doctor friend of mine on the podcast who talked about insulin resistance. And I guess just to connect the dots here, the point being that if you're eating a lot of refined carbs, you are increasing sugar levels in your bloodstream, and therefore that can lead to insulin resistance. Versus eating whole carbs allows you to moderate that to the extent that is required, in addition to the value of fiber itself in the diet. right? Would
Yeah.
that be
So,
a would that make
uh,
sense?
yeah, I see what you're saying. So, like, if you are having a complex carbohydrate or a whole carbohydrate, you will not seek a spike in blood sugar as you would
Hmm.
with the refined because it takes your body a lot longer to break that down.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's not associated with increasing your risk for insulin resistance or increasing your
Hmm.
risk for type 2 diabetes,
Hmm.
where the refined is. Also, refined carbohydrates, meaning the white carbs or the processed foods, are associated with it because they are still calorically dense.
Hmm.
You absorb them, you can retain them as fat. You can lead to weight
Hmm.
gain,
Yeah.
increasing your risk for type 2 or insulin resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Perfect. Let's move
Yeah.
on to the next one. The next big one.
Oh, the next big one. How about protein?
Yeah, everyone's
So,
favorite. That's the
oh,
that's the
yeah.
popular one, right? Solve all
Yes,
problems by eating more protein.
protein. I know. So, protein is glorified in America, and
Hmm.
I think it's becoming glorified all over the world.
Hmm.
It is important. It is one of the main building blocks of our body. They're
Hmm.
used to make our muscles, our tendons, our organs, for endurance runners like yourself, repair.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there's so many functions, just as like carbohydrates do too.
Hmm.
But they don't necessarily need to be 50% of your diet, as we
Hmm.
tend to think in America. Depending on how sedentary you are to
Hmm.
how active you are, they can be anywhere between 10 to 35% of your
Hmm.
caloric intake or of your plate, however you do choose to plate it.
Hmm.
So that's being important. But protein, they're important. So I won't take away from that at all.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure you've heard of amino acids, making it a complete protein or an incomplete protein.
Hmm.
Our bodies can make some of them, our bodies can't make others. So your body produces some of those amino acids, but others we must need to eat, which are
Hmm.
essential amino acids.
Hmm.
And that's what makes up a protein. Um, so for someone like you as an endurance athlete, having a greater amount of protein in your diet is important
Hmm.
versus maybe my grandmother who sits, right? But she
Hmm.
is older, so she does have greater needs. But
Hmm.
maybe someone of middle age that isn't as active
Hmm.
doesn't have as greater protein needs.
Right.
Um,
And when you talk about protein, quality of protein, right? For example, you get a lot of BCAAs being marketed now as like supplements, right? So can you talk to quality of proteins? Does it are all proteins made equal, or is there a certain kind of food that one needs to think about to get high quality protein versus another?
so a couple things. Let's talk about the BACAs that you can buy over the counter or protein powder. These supplements are not regulated by the FDA or the USDA.
Hmm.
So something very important when you are purchasing these items is to make sure they're third party verified.
Hmm.
Very, very important. And even then, that doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% of that product that is labeled because they're not regulated. So they don't
Hmm.
have to report everything that is in that powder.
Hmm.
Um, I'm a firm believer of eating the foods in its whole state
Hmm.
to get your nutrient needs
Sure.
than in a powder or a liquid form.
Hmm.
I'm an extreme firm believer in that. Because with a little intention for someone like you as an endurance athlete can get
Hmm.
your 1 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilograms of body weight intentionally if you make that effort.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a little homework, little calculations, writing it out. But if you have
Yeah.
a plan, you can do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but am I to say that no, I'm against it? I'm not against it. I just each person's individualized.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I am very, very worried about those kind of items.
Hmm. Hmm. So let's talk a little bit about what is BCAA. Why do you need to actually supplement it? What's the value in doing that?
So current research does not necessarily back that you need those. It's potentially another marketing, just like creatinine was for a long time, and it still is to some extent. But do marathon runners need that extent? Probably not. And these are probably more for professional athletes that is their career, where they are expending, and their protein and their body breakdown is significantly, which is completely different than the average marathon runner or endurance trainer.
So why do you need it? Why do they say it's required? Like, what does it do?
Who says it's required though? These are just like, it's called nutrition noise, right? So if you were to go meet with a sports certified registered dietitian, I guarantee she's not going to tell you to take that. If you're going to go meet maybe with a personal trainer who's not a registered dietitian, or even just a sports quote unquote nutritionist, anybody can be a nutritionist. Santosh, you can say you're a nutritionist. There's no education required or licensing required in the United States for that. So, but a registered dietitian, we have to go through schooling. We have to take a national exam. We have to take continuing education units. I mean, it's never ending. We're the only ones that can work in a hospital. You won't see a nutritionist in the hospital.
Right. Okay.
So that nutritional noise is going to be out there, and it's for us to filter out. And so we appreciate podcasts like yours or conversations like yours that hit a platform where we can educate, saying, figure out who you're getting this information from to know if it's really valid, sourceful, make sure it is scientifically evident, like based on science. Yeah.
So if not taken, so let's for the moment say that you don't need a supplementation for something like branch chain amino. First of all, what is branch chain amino
acid?
And the second is, if you're not taking it as a supplement, do you need to find it in your diet? Do you need to find it in your food? So can you talk to that a little bit?
Right. So that's protein. Endurance athletes like yourself or the ones that follow you need significant amount of protein compared to someone like me who's not an endurance trainer. I do my regular exercise and I supplement. Your grams of protein can be anywhere between, like I said before, anywhere around 1 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, right? Do you need to have 2 grams? No, you don't need to. But, some studies show about 1.8 grams. So it varies. So this needs to be individualized. Where can you get your protein though? You can get your protein from so many items, even if they are vegetarian. So do you think most of your followers are, well, okay. So even for general, we know animal protein is out there, right? So when you're looking at animal protein, look for something that's a lower in fat and a lean meat. Okay. Seafood is also a great source. Salmon, eating it 2 to 3 times a week, great. But then if you're going to go for vegetarians, you've got dairy, you have milk, you have Greek yogurt, you have Icelandic yogurt, you have cheese. Some people don't recognize just, those cheese sticks that our kids put potentially in a lunchbox. Those have 7 grams of protein in it. Who would have known, right?
Yeah.
Then you can go to our desi food, which are like beans and legumes, right? And then also in the American, that has a greater source of protein. For vegans, tofu, edamame, that's also an option, along with the beans and the lentils. Secrets are nuts and seeds, which Indians have used for years, thousands of years, and great source of protein. So that's kind of where I tend to say, if you need your protein, there are other forms of it, and they all have amino acids. That's how they are considered a protein.
Got it.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. It makes total sense. So there's a lot of pearls of wisdom you just shared, right? So one is, just to call it out, one is, if you're especially from an Indian diet point of view, your rajma chawal, your dal,
Absolutely.
roti, you're getting your proteins from those. That's what I'm taking away. And then nuts. You talked about nuts again, a great source of
Hmm.
your almonds, your walnuts and whatever. You get those
Right.
big boxes in Costco these days, which hey, those are all great nuts.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, you were not getting all those that level of nuts in so easy consumption, right? Easy to consume
Right.
form. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. And so let's move to the next big one. We covered proteins. Let's to next.
Fat.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fat is our
The
one.
villain,
Well, so and
the bad
that's.
guy.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's not. I think we
I
give.
know.
So there are different types of fat, which you and I
Mm,
both know. Saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated fats. The good fats, the bad fats. Um, but fats are important.
mm,
You can also get them in the same forms that I had talked about with sources of protein, with like you can get them in your nuts and your seeds, you can get them in
mm,
your dairy products, right? But fat's not bad, and I don't want it to be. Um, so lipids are important. They're a part of our cell membranes. They're
mm,
important to maintaining our body temperature. There's an important part of it, and there's also an important part for satiety
mm,
with that macronutrient. When we go to, let's say, oh, I want to get healthy. I'm going to try to lose weight. I don't want diabetes. I don't want heart disease. And you eat a big bowl of salad with no dressing on it, and no fat at all.
mm,
You're going to be hungry in about an hour or so. And
mm,
then what's going to happen? You're going to indulge on that bag of potato chips or something like that
mm,
because you're so hungry.
mm,
Um, so the combination of a protein and a fat together will provide satiety.
mm,
Um, and fat is also important for fat soluble vitamins. We
mm,
need our fat soluble vitamins. We need them to the transport of those vitamins and absorption.
mm,
Fat soluble vitamins are vitamins A, K, D, and E.
mm,
So it's the villain in our desi culture because sometimes maybe the oil that we use, but
mm,
more so than that, the fried part of it, like
mm,
the Indian snacks.
mm,
Um, but if you're gonna be using it to make your vegetables or a biryani or any of that stuff, that's
mm,
okay. You need
mm.
it. It's okay.
Yep.
Choose a healthier oil. You can use an avocado oil or an olive oil for something like that,
Mm,
instead of using a generic canola oil.
yeah. Or ghee.
You can use ghee. So ghee is considered clarified butter. Ghee is okay in minimal use.
Mm,
It's just like a butter in some sense. It's not bad. And you'll never hear me say anything's bad for you. It's just
yeah.
let's limit the use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to give you a dry roti without ghee. Like have
Yeah.
the ghee on it. It's okay.
Yeah. And that's wonderful because key points you talked about is satiety. Just being satisfied with what you eat, which is a key thing, right? I mean, the fact is we are emotional eaters as human beings. We don't just don't eat just to survive. We eat because we want to feel good about what we eat. So in that sense, what you said makes a lot of sense because it's just that little sprinkle of ghee in your dal or sambar with some rice. it,
Yeah.
it just is magical to eat, and it makes you full. It makes you happy. You don't have to overeat because this way you also feel like you're full and satisfied, and also you last longer, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
so
Right.
that so I from what I'm hearing, it's almost like fat is the emotional side of eating in a way.
Well, fat carries flavor. So
Hmm.
that's where we tend to want to have fatter foods or lean towards them.
Hmm.
Um, but to miss out on them is not key.
Yeah.
Choosing them wisely, just like when we choose a carbohydrate or just like when we choose
Yeah.
a protein. those are important.
Yeah.
And when I say choose, I'm saying that in a very loose term, meaning that be intentional with your nutritional
Mm.
intake, you know, on a large basis.
Mhm.
And then if you're going to a wedding or a birthday celebration, you're doing this or that, that's fine. Enjoy it.
Mhm.
There's no harm, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
on your daily, be intentional
Mhm.
and take care of yourself. You get one body. Let's
Yeah.
treat
Yeah.
it well.
Yeah. And the other thing that you just said was the whole idea, the whole issue of snacks and frying, and I think there's also an element of old oil being used a lot of times, right? Not necessarily at home, but if you're going to buy
Reuse.
food from outside, reuse, bad oil or rancid oil, oxidative stress,
Yeah.
especially from an athletic perspective. I've read that, when you put that kind of oil in your body, your inflammation is going to go up. And that leads to problems in recovery. And so that's another key element in what I'm hearing and what you're saying.
So that is key for everybody,
Mm,
and even in Greater and South Asians, because you don't want to use, that oil that's been fried already in and then cool
mm,
down, and then we re-bring it up with the temperature,
mm,
and then we cool it down again. That is very oxidative. It is greater for inflammation, and that
mm,
increases our risk for heart disease.
mm,
Um, so that is very, very key. If that's one message that any Indian listening or any South Asian listening to this podcast today is, don't let your parents, don't reuse oil like that.
mm, mm.
Use it once and it's done. Don't
Done.
reuse because it's not healthy.
That's a great tip. I mean, there's a
Because
great
it changes
thing
the
to be noted.
structure
Yeah.
of the oil.
Mm,
So
mm.
just please let's not do that. Absolutely
Yeah.
against it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
better off pan frying a little bit where you use minimal oil, but you're
Hmm.
pan frying it and then you can throw that oil away versus like deep frying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll still get similar taste.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. So we talked about while we were talking about fats, we talked about vitamins and fat soluble vitamins. So we time to maybe pivot into micronutrients. And my first question is, what are vitamins? Like, what are they?
So we have 13 essential vitamins and 13 essential minerals. And I think that we kind of cross
Hmm.
what vitamins and minerals are. But they're super important and they're essential for our growth, our brain growth, brain development, especially in children under age two and under, our immune function, just the metabolism of our energy for you as an athlete.
Hmm.
Um, they're also building blocks, just like carbohydrates
Hmm.
are our energy, but these micronutrients are found in our foods that
Hmm.
we eat. So the big push, eating the color of the rainbow, right? Why do we say eat the color of the rainbow? Because you get a variety of vitamins and minerals in that. You
Hmm.
provide variety in your diet. So you can get these essentials through diet.
Hmm.
Um, Now, sure, there are cases where people are deficient in
Hmm.
certain vitamins or minerals, um, but that's only diagnosed through a health professional and then should be supplemented through that. And
Hmm.
as I mentioned before, like just like protein supplements or any of that stuff, vitamins and minerals are also not regulated. They're not
Hmm.
FDA regulated or USDA. None of that is. So I also encourage there to look for a third party
Hmm.
verification when you use it. Don't supplement just to supplement
Hmm.
because there is risk for toxicity
Hmm.
in them, even though we think, oh, I know I'm really low in it. I need to take it.
Hmm.
Don't do that. Make sure
Hmm.
you do it and tell your primary care physician, hey, I'm taking these supplements
Hmm.
because there is an interaction with medication as well.
Hmm.
There could be a potential interaction with medications as well.
Hmm.
Um, so these So vitamins come in water soluble vitamins, which
Hmm.
are the whole gamut of vitamin B's
Hmm.
and vitamin C. And then, as I mentioned before, Fat soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. Something to be aware of is a lot of these vitamins and minerals have overlapping functions. So we could have a whole podcast on what each vitamin and mineral does, because they're each so differently. But for South Asians, I find that we're at greater in more recent times, because I've been working with them. I'm noticing that we're deficient sometimes in B12, especially the ones that are vegan. So if you are vegan, go talk to your PCP or registered dietitian and start taking a B12 supplement. Get that checked. The other one is vitamin D, which is a very common one. We like to be covered, don't go out in the sun, etc. In vitamin, you don't want to be vitamin D deficient, so that would be a D3 supplement. And you need to get that lab work checked, because then we can decide how many IUs you need to take to replete your stores. Sometimes calcium too, iron. So it just depends, but those are the bigger ones that I see that South Asians are at greater risk for being depleted in.
Yep. And, I was once about 5 or 6 years ago, after I started feeling very sluggish while I was running, and as a runner, and I started feeling sluggish, and I would feel very tired, not as energetic, and I started kind of thinking it was because of getting older, and I said, maybe I was getting older, so I'm not running as well as before. And then when I did my blood work, they found that I was low on iron and vitamin D, and so obviously that fixed the problem. And then I did some, when I asked Dr. Google, of course, and then Dr. Google said, well, seems to be a common issue among runners, because especially if you're someone who sweats a lot, you tend to be low on iron, just like someone who bleeds a lot, and so something that's just sharing it here, because that's another thing as runners and athletes, something to be aware of. So if you're feeling sluggish, there could be a lot of reasons, but just make sure that you talk to your doctor and get checked with these aspects as well.
I agree 100%. The sluggish is super key. That's like one of the ones that people often say, oh, I'm iron deficient because I'm feeling tired, but it's actually also a symptom of vitamin D3, like D being depleted in that. And you want that energy. You need it to sustain your athleticism. But it's important, like you've noticed, as you started taking that, you noticed the change, and I'm sure you felt much, much better.
At least it wasn't because I was getting older.
Yeah, of course. And then, and there, we talk about antioxidants also. Oh, I need to have antioxidants. They decrease my risk for cancer. They're important for heart disease. But you get these in the variety of color that we eat. They're associated with, if you're trying to get your vitamins and minerals in, get them from your fruits and veggies. They're super key, very important. So something that actually just came up before you and I got on with the client, and I thought I would bring this up, is, but I know I'm eating my fruits and vegetables, but if you're eating the same ones weekly, you're not getting a variety. And that variety is key. So yes, start with getting those steps in of including maybe one new fruit a week or trying a new vegetable once a week. But that variety is super key. If you're eating cabbage, green beans, and okra every week, and those are your vegetables, well, you're only going to get those vitamins and minerals that are in those vegetables. But if you add an eggplant, or you add, I don't know, there's so many vegetables. You add mushrooms, you add bell peppers, you add any of that stuff, you're going to be getting some others. And so I find that really key. And if you're only eating an apple or a banana, let's try to switch it up. Let's add to it. Keep the apple and banana, but maybe we add some other fruits to it too.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's a lot of pearls of wisdom there. You talked about with regards to multivites, the vitamins. You talked about something called a third party certification or something.
Yeah.
So which what kind of stamp or what kind of symbol should one be looking for to make sure it is certified?
You'll see it. It's often like a gold one, and it'll
Hmm.
say like, or sometimes like a green check, and it'll say third party verified.
Hmm.
You'll see it. Um,
Okay.
so just look at the label and you'll see it.
Hmm.
Google search is great for this too. You can just say third party verified vitamins and minerals, and that's a great option too. And you'll be able to look
Okay.
it up. In some cases, it's not the whole brand line. It could be in that certain brand. It could be just certain, it could be certain vitamins only that are third party verified, not all minerals, maybe.
Hmm.
So just make sure you pay attention to that specifically. And then going back to your iron, I did want to tap into one thing. I know that iron can be constipating for some.
Hmm.
There's two forms of iron that you can get orally: iron sulfate, which is the traditional one that's offered, and then there's iron gluconate, which is also offered. Iron
Hmm.
gluconate is a vegetable one, so it looks like it might, what's the word? It might be just a little bit easier to pass the
Hmm.
bowels and on your stomach.
Hmm.
So that's important. I just wanted to make sure I put that out there for your listeners.
Sure, that makes sense. So micronutrients, we talked about minerals, we talked about vitamins. Vitamins are basically another set of building blocks, just
Yes.
like the macro proteins,
Yeah.
carbs, and stuff. Um, what about the other thing we tend to hear a lot these days is probiotics.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you, or even something like say omega threes, where do you put those in your spectrum?
So they're important. So the prebiotics and the probiotics you can get from diet
Hmm.
yourself. So yogurt's a great one. Fermented foods are a great one. Like the dosa batter is fermented.
Hmm.
That's a great way to get it also. And so these are some things that we tend not to think about, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that if you can have that in your diet, great. I don't encourage supplement without talking to somebody, because
Hmm.
a professional, medical professional, whether you talk to a dietitian or you talk to your PCP,
Hmm.
because yes, they're over the counter, you can buy them, but there's so many different ones, parts by
Hmm.
billions of this, and there's the refrigerated kind, then there isn't, then there's ones that have certain bacilluses, others that don't. There's such a variety,
Hmm.
and they can have an adverse effect too.
Hmm.
So to feed your gut, you want your gut to have, I'm going to go back to this. You want to feed your gut to be healthy because of the prebiotics and the probiotics. And one says, oh, you should be having them, is because you have a lack of variety in your diet.
Hmm.
And to achieve a healthy gut, keep in the whole grains, get your legumes
Hmm.
in, get your variety of fruits and vegetables in to feed your gut, which is your intestine, the good stuff. Feed it
Hmm.
well. If you're going to feed it processed refined sugars and in abundance, then you're going to have some discomfort. You may have constipation, you may have
Hmm.
bloating, you may have adverse effects, which then probably can be resolved by just changing a shift in your diet. But if it's something greater, then you do need to see somebody.
Hmm.
It's just easy to be bought, but I think if you're on an antibiotic, make sure you take some yogurt with it daily.
Hmm. Hmm. And I've always wondered about dosa batter. So when you actually cook it, uh, does it still continue to perform a job of a probiotic or a prebiotic because those
Some
bacteria is dead?
so I'm going to be 100% honest. We don't know. We don't test it.
Hmm.
But logic will say some of it is killed,
Hmm.
right? Because of the
So
high
yeah,
temperature cooking.
yeah.
Um, but is it 100%? I couldn't tell you.
Hmm. To be safe, I think yogurt is a good, just the best.
It is absolutely,
Yeah,
and we have that as an option, right? Like
yeah,
we can, as
yeah,
Indians, most Indians have yogurt incorporated into their diet, unless
yeah.
they're vegan. And so vegan sources are others. You can try the Korean, what do you want? What am I going to say? The Korean kimchi or the American sauerkraut. That's also fermented. Some of our Indian achars are fermented. So there are some options that we can do. And if you have a variety in your diet, then you don't need to worry so much about it.
Yeah. What about something like beer and wine? They are fermented foods in a way, right? Or am I completely
So
going wrong?
no, but they're not going to have the benefit because of the sugar alcohol in it. If anything, it will cause an adverse effect. It's not feeding your gut the right bacteria. How's that?
Sorry, guys. I tried.
But again, as I say, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having it in your diet. Have a glass of
Yeah.
wine, have a beer. Everything is okay in moderation. It's just like
Yeah.
carbohydrates. Why do they get the bad rap? Is because we overindulge in them and we're not balancing it with a lean
Yeah.
protein and a healthy fat.
So one thing I do want to ask is why choose a nutritional coach? What is your view? Why should anyone, choose a coach?
So I think if you're gonna go with a registered dietitian, I think first and foremost, traditionally we were used for disease. If you have diabetes, you have heart disease, you have kidney disease, you have some sort of disease or a GI disorder, more than often your doctor will refer you to a registered dietitian. But since 1995 till now, things have changed and the nutritional scope has changed. Now you use registered dietitians often for preventative medicine in a form. We know science has evolved. We know how important nutrition and health is and the foods that you eat to sustain your life, prevent disease. So how can you make your life greater? How can you elevate your current diet to maximize potential, be healthier? So you can do it from that perspective. Or for someone like your followers or someone like you, how can you use nutrition to improve your endurance or improve your pace, your energy, your performance, basically maximize your performance? Where does that fall? It could be a variety of reasons, right? Or it could be, how do I include or how do I meal manage? Because the difference is dietitians will not tell you what to eat, will teach you how to eat. Does that make sense? So we will not meal plan for you, but we will tell you, hey, this is how you can do it. And this is how you can take, your traditional meal and elevate it.
Makes a lot of sense.
It's always about adding than
So
subtracting.
that is a fair bit of ground you covered today, Sarika. So thanks for sharing that. And I do want to spend a little bit about time on also your how you're using social media for the greater good. You have a huge Instagram following, and I'll share the handle in the show notes so people can find you, as well as you have a fabulous website. You publish new recipes. So tell us a little bit about that. How did that happen?
Thank you. When I went into private practice, the psych group that I had a website, and my picture was on there, and I was the registered dietitian. All of a sudden, Indian people started coming to me because they were like, "Hey, you look like me. Can you help me with this? Or do you understand this?" And then from there, I branched off and I did my own thing. And we go to dietitian meetings, and a fellow dietitian was like, "You need to get on social media." I was like, "What?" I'm like, "That's what my kids use. I have teenagers." And so I went on there, and I actually was initially just Sarika Shah, on there, just my name. But then, you kind of learn a little bit. You research. Google's great, right? You research quite a bit and you figure out what works. And so I'm Indian Nutritionist on there so people can find me. It's a sense of being able to put I want people to
Yeah.
know, I want South Asians to know it's okay to eat your foods living in America. Don't give them up. Your cultural foods have so many benefits. Um, and so it's just
Yeah.
a platform for
Beautiful.
me to spread that word and don't give up our culture and food. There's so much greatness to it.
Yeah. No,
So
it's
yeah, and
amazing.
it's just
Especially the
from
next
there, it's kind of
generation
grown.
of
It's taken its own
South Asians
ways.
growing in America, right? I mean, I'm a first generation, so I grew up in India, so I don't, you know, that's in the, it's in my neural networks. I mean, I can't be without it. But the next generation, so what you're doing in social media is very important
Yeah.
because the next generation can get a lot of important and relevant information. They stay connected with it. So yeah, that's amazing. Any final message you want to share with our audience?
No, I think I kind of said it. Eat your
Mm,
cultural foods. Don't think twice about them. Incorporate them. Elevate your game when it comes to your meals. Don't don't
mm,
second guess. Just add. Don't eliminate. And things will change for the better. And don't forget to hydrate. That's super key. Water, water, water. Couldn't emphasize
mm.
that enough. But otherwise, just enjoy what you're eating. Be present when you eat. And thoroughly
Yeah,
enjoy the
terrific.
taste, the texture,
All right,
and the
Sarika,
food,
I
and the
those are great
conversation that you may
messages
have at
and
the
great
table with your family.
tips that we can take away. Appreciate you
Hmm.
taking the time, and I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of the evening. And we'll stay in touch. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Take care. Bye.